There comes a moment in every man's journey when the world he once tolerated no longer fits the man he is becoming, and the chaos that once felt familiar suddenly feels exhausting. The emotional battles that once consumed his energy no longer deserve his attention. The wounds that once shaped his identity no longer hold authority over his choices. And somewhere in the silence, after enough healing, a realization rises inside him with unmistakable clarity. The war inside him is ending. This is the sacred transition from warrior to king. Not a transition built through domination, ego, control, or external status, but through inner order, emotional discipline, self-respect, and the quiet maturity that only arrives after a man has walked through enough darkness to finally understand himself clearly. Most men never reach this stage because they become addicted to surviving. Their nervous systems become so conditioned to chaos that peace feels unfamiliar. So they keep fighting battles long after the war should have ended. Keep choosing emotionally unstable relationships because intensity feels more real than calmness. Keep proving themselves to people who were never capable of seeing them clearly. And keep operating from wounds while calling it passion, loyalty, or love. But eventually, something changes inside a man who has suffered consciously enough. He becomes tired, not physically tired, spiritually tired. Tired of abandoning himself for connection. Tired of emotional chaos disguised as chemistry. Tired of explaining his worth to people committed to misunderstanding him. Tired of carrying old pain into every area of his life. And this exhaustion becomes sacred because it forces him into awareness, into truth, into confrontation with himself. At first, he believed the chaos in his relationships was love. The emotional highs felt intoxicating. The unpredictability felt exciting. The constant tension felt meaningful. But after healing, he sees the truth clearly. Chaos was never love. It was his past, echoing through adult relationships. A nervous system raised around instability often mistakes emotional unpredictability for connection because chaos feels familiar, and the wounded boy inside the man seeks what feels known, even when what feels known is harmful. This is why emotionally unavailable people once felt magnetic to him. This is why inconsistency triggered obsession. This is why he kept chasing relationships that slowly destroyed his peace. But now, he sees it differently. The relationship that shattered him was not punishment, it was revelation. It exposed where he still feared abandonment, where he still lacked boundaries, where he still ignored his intuition, where he still believed he had to earn love through performance and sacrifice. And once a man sees this clearly, he cannot unsee it. This is the beginning of the transition from warrior to king. The warrior archetype serves an important purpose in masculine development. The warrior survives, fights, protects, pushes forward through pain, confronts the shadow, faces the dragon, and learns discipline through hardship. But the warrior is not meant to rule forever, because eventually survival itself becomes exhausting. A warrior asks, "How do I defeat this?" A king asks, "Why am I giving this my energy at all?" A warrior reacts instinctively to threats. A king creates inner order, so chaos loses access to him completely. And this is the stage the man now enters. The war is ending inside him, not because life became easier, but because he became more conscious. He no longer feels the need to fight every battle. He no longer reacts emotionally to every disturbance. He no longer chases validation through proving himself endlessly, because his identity is no longer built around survival. This is one of the deepest transformations a man can experience. When healing becomes real, he outgrows entire versions of his former life. People who once felt exciting now feel draining. Dynamics that once activated obsession now feel emotionally expensive. Places, conversations, and relationships that once matched his wounded nervous system no longer resonate with who he has become. At first, this shift feels lonely because growth often creates separation before alignment. But the healed man eventually realizes He can no longer participate in emotional environments that violate his peace, not because he believes he is superior, but because his nervous system has evolved beyond constant chaos. This is the difference between the warrior and the king. The warrior seeks breakthroughs. The king maintains order. The warrior fights for respect. The king embodies self-respect naturally. The warrior searches for peace externally. The king creates peace internally. And once a man reaches this level, something extraordinary happens. He stops chasing. He no longer looks for a relationship to complete him emotionally. He no longer seeks validation to feel valuable. He no longer needs attention to confirm his worth. For the first time in his life, he feels whole within himself. This changes everything externally, because inner wholeness reorganizes a man's energy completely. His posture changes, his tone changes, his standards change, his boundaries strengthen naturally. His choices become slower, clearer, more intentional. He no longer over-explains himself trying to earn understanding. He no longer clings to people who repeatedly destabilize his peace. He no longer fears solitude because solitude became the place where he rebuilt himself. And because of this, he becomes impossible to manipulate through emotional chaos. A man who no longer fears abandonment cannot be controlled through inconsistency. A man who trusts his intuition cannot be controlled through confusion. A man who knows his worth no longer negotiates with disrespect simply to avoid loneliness. This is sovereignty emerging naturally, not through ego, through integration. And because his inner world has changed, the people he attracts begin changing too. The wounded warrior often attracts relationships built around unresolved trauma, emotional instability, inconsistency, and unconscious attachment patterns. But the king no longer resonates with those dynamics because he no longer resonates with chaos within himself. Now he values emotional safety, consistency, accountability, stability, maturity, and genuine intimacy. He begins recognizing that healthy love feels peaceful rather than addictive, calm rather than chaotic, grounded rather than emotionally destabilizing. This is where many men finally understand that peace is not boring. Peace is sacred. The king no longer seeks women who trigger emotional survival patterns. He seeks partnership built on wholeness, not because he judges wounded people harshly, but because he understands them deeply. He used to be trapped in those unconscious cycles himself. He knows the pain behind emotional chaos. He sees the wounded child inside emotionally unavailable people. But now he also understands something equally important. He's no longer responsible for rescuing others from themselves. His role is no longer to save wounded people through self-sacrifice. His role is to protect the peace he fought hard to build within himself. This is why the king leads differently than the warrior. A warrior uses force. A king uses presence. A warrior seeks control. A king creates stability. A warrior reacts emotionally under pressure. A king remains grounded enough to make clear decisions. The king's energy is not loud, but people feel it immediately. Calmness, clarity, emotional steadiness, discipline without aggression, confidence without performance. His leadership no longer comes from ego, trying to prove itself. It comes from internal alignment. And eventually he realizes the greatest battle was never against the world. Every heartbreak, every trigger, every emotional collapse, every painful relationship, every confrontation with fear was guiding him toward himself. The final enemy was never another person. It was the fragmented version of himself still operating from shame, abandonment, fear, and emotional survival. The true victory was never domination over others. It was wholeness, integration, self-reconciliation. This is why the transition from warrior to king feels so profound psychologically. The man is no longer living to survive his past. He is finally building his future consciously. And now, life moves differently. He chooses differently, speaks differently, loves differently, builds differently. The energy once spent fighting chaos is now redirected toward purpose, leadership, legacy, and creation. This is the beginning of the King's chapter, not survival, not endless healing, creation, expansion, service, vision. The warrior healed himself. The king builds something greater than himself. So if you are walking through heartbreak, shadow work, nervous system healing, emotional rebuilding, or the painful realization that the life you once tolerated no longer aligns with who you are becoming, understand this clearly. You are not lost. You are transitioning. The old identity is dissolving because the king inside you can no longer survive inside patterns built from chaos. Trust the silence, trust the discomfort, trust the separation happening beneath the surface. One day you will look back and realize the battles were never there to destroy you. They were preparing you to build your kingdom. And if this message resonated with you, subscribe. This channel is for men rebuilding themselves mentally, emotionally, physically, and spiritually through grounded masculinity, Jungian psychology, shadow integration, nervous system healing, emotional discipline, self-mastery, and sovereign living. And comment below, what part of your old life no longer aligns with the man you are becoming? Chop wood, carry water, and let's keep the fire burning.